What's up, guys? Connor Allen here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. And today, we have a lot of catching up to do about the right wing, radical, busted up Supreme Court absolutely decimating last week. Two major decisions that are going to have long lasting implications. One I will talk about in a third I will tack on, which piggybacks off of the frustrating legacy that this Supreme Court is already defining for itself, as well as building on top of Ron DeSantis in Florida, attacking the LGBTQ plus community over and over and over again. The Supreme Court, of course, siding with a fake well, we'll get into that. It's the Supreme Court case regarding graphic design work and basically the right to discriminate against people. So that's a third case on top of the two that you're seeing listed on the scroll below me. Then we're going to be talking about again, I want to highlight there's a piece that came out today, I believe in the New Republic. I have it pulled up, but I can't tell which site it's from, but I think it was written by two different spots, but talking about Allegheny County, which is where Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is, and how progressives out there are leading the way, and specifically how I'll just say the Democrats are basically electing progressives to lead the way, whereas in other parts of the state we haven't seen the fight, the gravitas of people throwing their weight around and really winning in these big races when they need to. I mean, we can argue and go back and forth on some of that stuff, but Allegheny County has been something that, like, as somebody from the east side of Pennsylvania, I've been keeping my eye out on and been following the politicians out there absolutely for the last couple of years because they've been crushing it. So we'll get to that. We'll talk about Ron DeSantis or Meatball Ron and how he has been failing at chipping off any support of Trump's basically since he's announced. He has been steady as where he's been, and he has not been gaining. Then, of course, we can dive into some other miscellaneous stories, one of which being the mysterious substance found at the White House, which ended up being cocaine. We will talk about oh my god, that's just crazy. We'll talk about Moms for Liberty being in Philadelphia, and we'll talk about a weekend filled with violence, as many July 4ths have been in the past. And I'll just kind of start there real quick, which is frustrating, but not all that surprising. So we'll just start with that to get it out of the way, because unfortunately it is so commonplace that we cover this stuff, that I have to have multiple mass shootings within a weekend to basically even bring it up. But the 4th of July is being celebrated across this country, as it should be, by Americans to support the independence of the United States from Britain. We as a country have a lot to celebrate. We as a country have a lot to look back upon and be proud of. There are some significant improvements of people's lives since 1776, since 1865, since 1928, I want to say, when we elected, I think it was 28, when FDR was elected for the first time. There are monumental changes in the history. In 1965 with the Civil Rights Act, 1964 Civil Rights Act, 1965 with the Voting Rights Act, and progress, right? But amongst many of the things that America struggles to address, there is one thing that stands out that America refuses to address. And no, I'm not talking about systematic racism, although that is certainly one thing that some Americans refuse to address. I think that we as a country are coming to grips and trying to deal with that, and to some success trying to do that. And obviously we're going kicking, and some people are going kicking and screaming into accepting some of that and moving forward. That's still a work in progress, but I think we are moving in the right direction. The one spot where we refuse to move in the right direction is gun violence in America. There has been more mass shootings this year already than there are total days in the year. So there has been over 380 mass shootings. And as I'm saying this, that's the number from yesterday. So for all I know, it could be 390. It could be close to 400 at this point. We are barely halfway through the year. A mass shooting is qualified as more than 3 people being injured or killed in a shooting. This is a uniquely American problem. Here we have Mayor Kinney, who, if you don't recall, I played a video of last 4th of July when there was a shooting in Philadelphia. And he basically threw his hands up and he said, you know what? I don't know what to do anymore. I give up. I don't want to be mayor anymore. Now, this is a little bit better of a statement, because all he had to do is say, we want to do something about this, and it would be a better statement than that. But this is a good response and a good statement to say, Congress, where the hell are you? So let's take a look at it. It's really quiet for some reason.
In communities across the United States. This country needs to re-examine its conscience and find out how to get guns out of dangerous people's hands. A person walking down a city street with an AR-style rifle and shooting randomly at people while wearing a bulletproof vest with multiple magazines is a disgraceful but all too common situation in America. And I was today at Independence Hall, where they wrote that Constitution, and the Second Amendment was never intended to protect this. This was a terrible, tragic situation that has traumatized the community. We are begging Congress to protect lives and do something about America's gun problem.
So, the reason why, look, Mayor Kinney's on his way out. Sherrell Parker will be the next mayor of Philadelphia. But Sherrell Parker's not going to fix this issue. Josh Shapiro's not going to fix this issue. The American people have to work together to form common sense gun reform to have any dent into this issue. No, not even to solve it, just to put a dent in reducing it. We see all other violent crimes going down, but gun violence is the one thing that continues to stand out and be a unique American problem. At least 5 people killed in a mass shooting in Philadelphia, another mass shooting in Fort Worth, another mass shooting in Baltimore. Just this weekend, Jim Kenney talking about the Declaration of Independence being written in Philadelphia, and yet Philadelphia is riddled with mass shootings. Week after week, day after day. There is no need to have so many weapons on the streets. There is no need for this senseless violence time and time again. As he said, this is not what the Second Amendment was about. The Second Amendment, yes, we can argue about as we will talk about in just a second, the radical Supreme Court decision of the Heller case that says that basically, yeah, you can just have a gun. You deserve the right to have a gun. Any gun. You can just have any gun. Even though we all know that that is not the interpretation of the United States Constitution that the founders meant, because guess what? The Supreme Court right now doesn't even believe that. They do not believe that you can have a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. They do not believe that you can have a nuke. They do not believe that you can just have any old tank. The right to bear arms doesn't mean that you can just have any weapon that you want. That is not the interpretation of the United States Constitution and the Second Amendment in particular. We know that for a fact. We know that for a fact. And every single person watching this, unless they, I don't even know, unless you are like an extreme radical. Maybe your favorite book is The Anarchist Cookbook, but every single person watching this knows that you should not have a shoulder-mounted RPG. You and I should not have AK-47s, for that matter. But the line that is drawn in the sand, arbitrarily, is a constantly moving goalpost. Oh, we can ban bump stocks. Oh, but they'll just figure out how to make a semi-automatic weapon fully automatic again in a different way. That we didn't ban because it's just a technicality. The problem is access to the guns. That is all. We've gone over the solutions to these a million times. You can go back and watch one of those episodes if that's what you care about to find out today, because that is not what I'm talking about. I am just pissed off and I'm tired of seeing this. I'm tired of waking up on a Saturday morning, on a Sunday morning, on Tuesday when it's the 4th of July. We're supposed to be celebrating America, and there is a plethora of violence and mass shootings across the board. It's unacceptable. In the chat, Jank Uger of TYT came out in favor of the affirmative action decision. Curious to hear what you think of his opinions on that. I'll get to that in 1 second. If you think people are the problem, not guns, then you should support regulating people from getting guns. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's common sense solutions that we all agreed to. It's just that there's a refusal to actually implement them nationwide because the federal Congress is bought and sold. The federal Republican Party. This is there are probably a small handful of Democrats that are loved and touted by the NRA, but for the most part, it is the Republican Party. I will not go into the plethora of solutions here, but the basic thing that you can do is universal background checks. The second most vital thing that you can do, and again, I've talked about this in the past, I didn't support this originally, but I've come around and I've changed my mind, is making gun manufacturers liable for gun violence. Mass shootings and murders committed with their weapons, they should be held liable for those actions committed by people utilizing those weapons for what they're frankly designed to do, kill. So that is what it is. There's at least a dozen more other things that you could do. Yeah, you could say add the gun stores and sellers as well, as pointed out in the chat, to being liable. So, speaking of the radical far-right Supreme Court, let's go to the affirmative action case first, okay? Here we have from NPR, the Supreme Court guts affirmative action, which unironically, ironically, I should say, I actually named this episode that before pulling this article up as support here, but it fits. The Supreme Court guts affirmative action, effectively ending race-conscious admissions. So I'll just read the beginning here. In a historic decision, the U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday effectively ended race-conscious admission programs at colleges and universities across the country. In a decision divided along ideological lines, the six-justice conservative supermajority invalidated admissions programs at Harvard and the University of North Carolina. So, 6-3. You're going to hear that a lot moving forward. Until one of these Supreme Court justices dies or one of them retires, 6-3 is going to be the line. Now, let me point out, before we dive into the specifics of this decision, it will be 6-3 as the best case scenario if we do not re-elect Joe Biden in 2024. The worst case scenario is that it becomes 7-2. Or one of the older ultra-conservatives are replaced with a younger, even more ultra-conservative. This is why it is vital that we win the 2024 election. I will loop back to this and we will rewind and we will go back to 2016 after we discuss these two cases. But for now, I want to say, if you need a reason to vote Democratic in 2024, the Supreme Court should be it. Okay? Now, this is the majority opinion here. I'll read it for you. Many universities have, for too long, concluded wrongly that the touchstone of an individual's identity is not challenges bested, skills built, or lessons learned, but the color of their skin. Our constitutional history does not tolerate that choice. Of course, the dissent coming from Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was absolutely shredding the majority's opinion. But a dissent does not mean anything if you keep losing. A dissent is a nice little poem, is a nice little piece, and I'm glad to have Ketanji Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court. Very happy, in fact. But a dissent, the same way that RBG's dissents were dissents, they're just essays at that point, basically. Because you're losing. You lost. We lost. The admissions for these universities took into account race. We all know this. We all know it. We've all argued about it, I'm sure. The scapegoat is not reality. The absolute random example that your crazy uncle brings out at Christmas is not actually how affirmative action happened. Because I have to say happened because it's not allowed to happen anymore. Race-conscious admissions takes into consideration race because the history of this country includes the 150, 175, whatever, 200 plus year, no, it's, if we go to 1619 through 1865, you have over 200 years of slavery in this country. And then from 1865 to 1964, you have 99 years of functional segregation. Now, I will point out that during the Reconstruction era, some things were actually better than they were in the 1920s, per se. But that's not here. That's neither here nor there. That's a conversation for another time. You have 99 years of racial segregation after slavery ends. And that's assuming that you believe, which some people believe that racism ended in 1964, 1965. After 1964 and 1965, you still have enormous generational wealth gaps, which you still have today, by the way. You have enormous gaps in educational opportunities for kids, for adults. You have lack of job training. You have lack of job experience to get higher paying jobs, which is again perpetuating in a system of wealth inequality. In a system of wealth inequality, you have less funded schools. When you have crappy schools, it just keeps perpetuating. Okay? Now, when you have programs like affirmative action that take into consideration this history of oppression, this history of wealth inequality, you see a attempt. It's not successful, by the way. It's successful in some ways, but it is not completely successful. You see an attempt to right the wrongs and level the playing ground for people of all races. Now, this case is specifically talking about, oh, well, it actually discriminates against Asian people. Well, if you actually look at the statistics around affirmative action, one of the largest groups, if not the largest group, that benefited from affirmative action was actually white women. Now, that's not the argument of this case, and I don't even think that that's wrong. Because women have also faced years, decades, centuries, millennia of oppression under a patriarchal system. Now, in America, it's not been millennia, but let's be honest. They have not been treated as the same, as, white men. Now, this decision completely throws this out. So, I'll use myself in this example because guess what? I got into Penn State. I got into UPenn as a grad student. And despite what your crazy radical uncle might have you believe, I am a white dude. Yes, it is possible to get into college, believe it or not. Despite what, the radical right-wingers want you to believe as a white man. And in fact, you can't just pull any random black man or black woman and just say, yep, they're going into Harvard and that's the way it is, because that's not the way this works. Affirmative action takes into consideration grades, extracurricular activities, which, by the way, when you take into consideration wealth inequality, history of oppression, housing discrimination, educational disparities, not just wealth inequality, but the lack of an income in a household, it is more likely that a young, let's just say 16-year-old African-American has to work a full-time job or at least a part-time job to supplement a household's income based on the statistics of wealth in America, at least historically, and it is still accurate today, than someone that looks like me, who could be a part of the football team, who could be a part of the choir, who could be in whatever, National Honor Society. And that's not to say that these other kids, don't have any opportunity, but it is to say that if you compare apples to apples, you cannot say that it even is an apples to apples comparison. Because if you have to work full-time or part-time on top of going to school, you cannot have extracurriculars which increase your ability to go to college. If you're somebody that cannot play a sport, you might not be able to get the scholarship that you need to go to Penn State. If you can't join the choir, perform in the theater, perform in the band, get in the National Honor Society, be in the Key Club, if you can't do that because you are working, you are taking care of your mom, you're taking care of your grandpa, whatever it is, this is one way of leveling the playing field. It is not perfect. It is not perfect because I will tell you, it is not just, black kids that are affected by these issues. When we look at an intersectional analysis of class in America, it is not just them. But this program is not just looking at, the intention was not just to look at, boom, here's your wealth gap. It is also layering in a history of this country treating black citizens as second-class citizens. And it was working to alleviate this disparity, because if you provide people with higher educational opportunities, they will have better jobs, they will have the ability to make more money, they will break the cycle of wealth inequality, which then they can provide better housing, better food, better education for their kids. Now, in the chat, we had a allusion to Cenk Uygur of TYT coming out in favor of the affirmative action decision. Now, I don't know if that's the case. I'll take your word for it. Here's the thing. If affirmative action was to work the way that it was designed, and it was working, it did not complete the objective, but it was working. At some point, affirmative action has to come to an end. Because it says, okay, now, to the best of our ability, the playing field is equal. We know it's not equal now. Let me be clear. We know it is not equal now. At some point, The program would bring it to a more level playing field. But this was an inevitability on some level. At some point, the program would end. Now, if I was the Secretary of Education, and I will never be, so right-wingers, don't worry. I will never be the Secretary of Education, but I would look at implementing a more class-based analysis because it, one, will provide opportunities for minority groups to have much more opportunity for higher education. It just will. By the statistics of the United States income or wealth array, however you want to say, the census, basically, it will benefit those groups that affirmative action was originally intended to help. Second, though, and it's a more strategic approach, is that if you take a class-based analysis, you will also increase the likelihood of someone that is white, that needs a leg up, or a hand up, not a leg up, a hand up, to get those educational opportunities as well and break their familial cycle. Because those people exist too. And third, rhetorically, you break the stereotype that right-wingers, and this is not why you should make policies this way, but it is an added benefit. So let me be clear. This is not why, but it is an added benefit. You create a colorblind approach on providing more opportunity to people. Because like I just said, you are giving the opportunity to the black kid, you're giving it to the white kid, you are giving it to the Asian kid, you are giving it to the Hispanic kid, you're just giving it to everybody. And that levels the playing field. Because affirmative action does not just say that any Joe Schmo can go to Harvard. That is not what happens. That is absolutely dead wrong. It is taking into consideration a plethora of things, and affirmative action layered in race. That is all that it did. Since that is not going to be allowed, I think the clear response is just to say a class-based analysis has to be put in place to say, okay, you come from, I don't know, the worst part, well, the worst part of Philadelphia. Let's just say you're from Harlem and you deserve an opportunity because you're a straight A student. And you know what? You work full time at McDonald's on top of going to school. And you know what? Maybe you were able to do one extracurricular. That person deserves a shot. I can't believe that that's a radical thing to say. I don't think that it is. I'm sure anybody that's watching this doesn't believe that. But there are people out there that believe that that kid is not the same as this other kid just because they needed another lens to be analyzed through. Another scope. Because again, the fixation on being so heteronormative, so white centric on some of these things. Like, why not just try to better the situation that we find ourselves in? Try to lend not a hand out, but a hand up to people. It's not that hard. But it goes without saying to say, a class-based analysis will not fix all of the problems either. But it will slowly, over time, lift all boats. But while we're on that topic, before we move over to student loan debt, the same right-wingers, the same exact right-wingers, do not want to get rid of legacy admissions. If you are so concerned with kids getting advantages that they don't deserve, or so you say, then why should kids still get legacy admissions? Why should the majority of people that go to Harvard be because their daddy went to Harvard? Why is that the case? Why should my kid, if I ever have a kid, get an easier chance to get into Penn State? Why should they? They shouldn't. They should be based on their own merit. That's the difference. Because the conservatives that are on the Supreme Court all went to Harvard and Yale and maybe UPenn. You know, I'm a UPenn guy here, but that is exactly the type of analysis, the class analysis, because to be in that cohort of people, the legacy admissions, you are by definition upper class. That is not merit-based. That is, and in the chat, we say most Ivy Leagues have already gotten rid of legacies. Well, hold on. Here we go. BBC, legacy admissions. Harvard accused of favoring mostly white students. Let me see. Ivy League. Here we go. Yep. So, while it might be the case that some of them, maybe Brown did, not all of them have. And as pointed out, 43% of white students at Harvard last year were legacy admissions or athletes. Yes. So, like, that is the point. The point is not to say if you are white, you shouldn't have a fair shot. Or if you're black, you shouldn't have a fair shot. The point is to say that if Daddy O'Hanlon, which I'm not alluding to my real dad. I'm just saying, like, my theoretical, metaphorical dad, if he went to UPenn, that I should get in easier. That is just bullshit. It just is. That's not how it should be. There really shouldn't be any, I don't think there should be any argument about it, because if we want to level the playing field, we want to have merit. That's the way it should be. So now let's go to the one that's going to get me even more riled up than I already am. We're just going to continue getting worked up. The question in chat, if they do get rid of legacy admissions, which, by the way, I'm not just talking about Ivy League schools here, because it's not just Ivy League schools that have legacy admission. That's not the case at all. But if they did get rid of legacy admissions, I would still say that it is not fair until you add a layer of class analysis to the mix, because then you can layer in and say, okay, access to education, K through 12, is limited for people that are impoverished. Now, disproportionately, minority populations in America are more impoverished than white populations. So, if you take class into consideration, you are providing minority groups with more opportunity while not excluding impoverished white folks at all. You're actually giving them both a much more fair shot at competing with the upper echelons of the wealth gap or wealth distribution. That is how you actually create competition. This is like capitalism 101. You can give the small guy a little hand up to compete with the big guy because otherwise the big guy is going to crush the little guy. That is how capitalism works. This is how education works. If you don't let little Susie or little Connor have an opportunity to go to a good primary school, a good middle school, a good high school, and let's just say that they go to a crap school, but they excel in that school, they should be given a shot to have a higher educational opportunity. Like it is not that insane. I don't know why. It is the simplest response to this, by the way. To just say, okay, you don't like the racial conscious admissions? Well, we're going to add a class-based analysis. What's wrong with that? Tell me, what's wrong with that? And in the meantime, even if they try to challenge it to the Supreme Court, which they might, it would take at least 2 years at this point to get to them. So at least in 2 years, you're still providing opportunities to kids that need it and kids that deserve it. Not only do they need it, they absolutely deserve it. So speaking of kids that deserve a shot at going to higher education, the Supreme Court, the radical right-wing broken Supreme Court, yes, we will say that one more time, ruled against President Biden's executive action to forgive student loan debt. Here we have, this is gonna, I'm just getting started, aren't we? Supreme Court kills Biden student loan relief plan. Here we have NBC News. The Supreme Court on Friday invalidated President Joe Biden's student loan debt relief plan, meaning the long-delayed proposal intended to implement a campaign trail promise will not go into effect. The justices divided 6-3 on ideological lines. Oh, wait, did I just read this article? Oh, no, I didn't. This is actually a different article. Ruled in one of two cases that the program was an unlawful exercise of presidential power because it had not been explicitly approved by Congress. Now, the authority in which, I'm going to come back here. The authority in which President Biden did this program was under the HEROES Act of 2003, which allowed for presidents in times of crises, which was then utilized in the COVID timeframe, but this was in response to 9/11, this was passed. It gives the discretion of the president to take these types of actions, to pause interest, to forgive debt, to do a lot of what we did with the PPP programs in COVID, by the way, which were astronomically more than what the amount of debt that would be forgiven here is. Just putting that out there. And that was under Donald Trump. That was under Trump. That wasn't under Biden. Gee, I wonder why that one went through. Because, oh, it was helping big businesses? Oh, it was helping the rich? Oh, damn. If only we were rich, then this would help us out. Then this would have went through. Oh, wait. If we were rich, we wouldn't have student loans. Now, remember, this was only going to alleviate $10,000 for borrowers, or up to $20,000 for borrowers if you had Pell Grants. That's still left billions of dollars. We have more student loan debt in this country than you can even possibly begin to imagine. Let me see if there's the ticker, active ticker. It is close. I know it is close to $2 trillion. I want to see if I can get an accurate number as to what it is today. Let's see. Oh. The quickest Google search finds it at $1.78 trillion. Trillion. Not billion. Trillion. With a T. We have so much student loan debt we could pay for basically what's on the books, the Iraq War. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think that people should have to go into debt to get an education. That's just my opinion. Now, I'm just, couple tens of thousands of dollars in debt, but, just my choice, right? Now, again, the PPP loans, have at it, guys. You could just have the debt forgiveness. I actually support that. I actually support small businesses, and I think that they should have gotten support during COVID. I just also happen to believe that students and, frankly, middle-aged people and old people deserve to have a break every once in a while. And canceling 10,000 is insufficient, but it's something. Now, here's something, and I'm curious what everyone else's take is. And so a question in chat, is Biden able to continue the non-payments? He is able to continue the non-payments if he so chooses. But this is the problem. Democrats don't want to fight. This is the problem with the Democratic Party when it comes to actually fighting. Progressives want to fight and fight and fight. Elizabeth Warren and Ayanna Pressley and Chuck Schumer, Chuck Schumer is no progressive, by the way, but the three of them proposed $50,000 in student loan forgiveness when Biden was elected. 50. The radical socialist Bernie Sanders, he ran on canceling all of it. Because guess what? The president has the authority to do so. Just not under this limited scope of forgiveness. Because guess what? You know who has the record of student loan forgiveness, excluding this proposal? Take a wild guess. It's President Joe Biden. Because they have the selective choices of who they are forgiving debt for. He has the authority. I believe it's the Higher Education Act. I have to pull it up. But he has the authority. That is the authority that allows them to cancel debt for all the other student loans that he forgives. The government can decide it. Congress could decide to do it. They just decided not to. Congress and the president could say, we know what? Maybe you have to get loans to go to school, but you don't have to get interest on them. They're non-interest bearing loans. You could just go and you pay them and we don't take interest on it. It'd be something. It'd be something. It wouldn't be good, but it would be something. Not going to do that. Oh, no. We have to punish the middle class. We have to punish the working class. If you work, we need that money back plus interest. We need that money back plus interest. You want to buy a house? I'm sorry, millennials. You're fucked. You want to get married and start a family? I'm sorry, Gen Z. You're screwed. That is the position that the government is putting young people in, because they don't care to take genuine action for young people. That is the message that they're sending. And they're not going to fight the Supreme Court. They're not going to get rid of the filibuster. So what do we do? Well, the first thing that I want to propose is that I got a letter. It's an email, but I got an email, an official email from the White House saying that I was approved for student loan forgiveness up to $10,000. Well, guess what? That's a lie. That's a lie. Thousands, if not tens of thousands of people put in the application and were approved. And I think that this should be, if if I was a lawyer, maybe I'd try it, but there should be a class action lawsuit to get these loans forgiven because the government said that they will be forgiven. I can pull up the email myself. It was approved. Second thing. Oh my God. I could probably go on this for a long time. The second thing is that they have to try again. The Democrats have to try again. President Biden has to try again. And if he doesn't, you're not going to... I mean this sincerely. This is not a threat. I'm just gonna tell it as it is. I'm gonna tell you in a second why it's so vital to vote for Democrats. But I'm just telling you that if there is not another attempt, there's not another crack at this, young people will not turn out in the same percentage that they did in 2022. The reason why we picked up and Joe Biden won in 2020. The reason why 2022 went to the Democrats was because young people turned out. Now, it's a presidential election, so there will be more people that turn out. But the unique ability of young people to win elections for Democrats is because we believed, and many, frankly, saw it, that Joe Biden was like, we're going to wipe out this debt for you. And they took actions, and they went to the polls and voted. That also happened to coincide, and we're going to wrap this all in together now. It also coincided in 2022 with the overturning of Roe versus Wade, where the Supreme Court, the radical right-wing Supreme Court, overturned a 50-year precedent removing women's right to their own bodily autonomy. This so happens to coincide now with the overturning of affirmative action and the Supreme Court ruling in favor of a graphic designer suing a non-existent person that they faked was looking for a website design and was for a gay wedding, which the person that they were allegedly using in the case is married to a woman, never filed the request for the website. It was completely fraudulent, should have never been in front of the Supreme Court, and now they are eroding the rights of LGBTQ plus people. They are eroding their civil rights. They're eroding our civil rights. They are just allowing people to be openly discriminated against. And that is the Supreme Court, which in 2016 was forever altered by that election. The historic period that we are living in right now, the infamous period that we are living in right now, where the Supreme Court is going after your neighbors, they're going after unions, they're going after teachers, they're going after every group that you could possibly think of. They are lessening our rights. Where we should be progressing, they are lessening. We are regressing because of the Supreme Court, because 2016, Hillary Clinton did not defeat Donald Trump. And we could relitigate a million times over the 2016 election. As a Bernie supporter, I went out and voted for Hillary Clinton proudly, and not to be like, oh, I'm a yippee, here's Hillary. I'm saying, here is who I'm voting for because I will not let that guy win. And yet, enough people did not turn out, or enough people voted for Trump. They were bamboozled into believing the drain the swamp nonsense that they appointed indirectly a stolen seat from Barack Obama, where it should have been Merrick Garland. They put in Neil Gorsuch, a big money corporate anti-union justice. And they put in Brett Kavanaugh. We all know about Brett Kavanaugh. And then they put in radical right-winger Amy Coney Barrett. So it is 6-3. 6-3. 6-3. And this is not to say we deserve this, because we don't, and nobody does. But elections have freaking consequences. If you don't turn up every single November to vote, and I know, I have voted for people I don't really love, believe it or not. You can't tell. I don't love every single person that I vote for. But voting is not a judgment of your moral superiority. It is a judgment on your end on material, pragmatic outcomes in your neighborhood, in your city, in your state, and in this country. Because if you sit idly, there is somebody that is not sitting idly, that is going to Moms for Liberty rallies and is going to Trump rallies, and they're voting. Oh, they are voting. They may have stormed the Capitol, they may have got arrested, but guess what? They are voting. So if you're getting pissed off about this stuff, like I am, you have to do something. Don't just tweet. I see some of you out there. You know who you are. No, anyone that's just tweeting is not watching this show. You can't just sit there and complain. That should be your takeaway. It is frustrating to get involved. It is time-consuming to get involved. But if you give a damn about your neighbors, you give a damn about your school board, you give a damn about yourself, about your sons, your daughters, the future generations of this country, because guess what? The Supreme Court is not exactly pro-environment. Neither is the Republican Party in the Congress, in Senate, and in the House of Representatives, or in your state house for that matter. Then you have to get involved. Vote, volunteer, donate, go to events, text bank, phone bank, knock doors, write articles, write books, make videos, do something other than complain. It's okay to complain. I'm doing it right now. But you have to take direct action. That is the only way that this happens. Sign petitions. That's the least effective thing that you can do, but sign petitions and frickin' vote. You have to vote. Okay? Oh. In the chat we have, so does Biden have the authority? Does he not have the authority to cancel student loan debt? Biden has the authority to cancel student loan debt. He does not have the authority utilizing the HEROES Act of 2003. So that is a very legalese way of saying that under this specific case, he can't cancel it. So if it was Lyndon Johnson, President Lyndon Johnson, let's just say, who loved a good fight in the Senate as a president, he would just go, okay. Or if it was FDR, and if it was, let's just go there. if it was the greatest Republican of all time, Abraham Lincoln. I'm going to pull this up. See if I can pull this up. If it was Abraham Lincoln, he would here we go. Abraham Lincoln would immediately be pushing back against the Supreme Court, because Abraham Lincoln said, and this is a direct quote, I'm pulling it here now for you. The candid citizen must confess that if the policy of the government upon vital questions affecting the whole people is to be irrevocably fixed by decisions of the Supreme Court, the instant they are made in ordinary litigation between parties and personal actions, the people will have ceased to be their own rulers, having to that extent practically resigned their government into the hands of that imminent tribunal. That is Abraham Lincoln. That is not Bernie Sanders. Look, I love Bernie, but that is not Bernie Sanders. That is Abraham Lincoln saying that you are putting these decisions in the hands of unelected elites that don't have the same problems, that don't face the same struggles. And they're not held responsible by the people of this country because they have appointments for life. There is no mechanism for the people to actually hold these people to account. So a ballsy president like Abraham Lincoln, FDR, who vehemently fought for Social Security against the Supreme Court, Lyndon Johnson, who fought for civil rights against his own party. Joe Biden could be amongst them, and it shouldn't just be for student loan debt. It should be for all of these things. I am so tired of playing patty cake with these radical extremists. I don't know how you can go out there and say, these are the most extreme people ever. This is Moms for Liberty. This is blah, 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 blah. But we have to work with them. We have to come together and work together, guys. There are Republicans out there that you can work with, but not all of them. And it is not acceptable to just be like, well, we tried. We tried. I'm sorry. We tried. I'm sorry. Not good enough. Not good enough. But all of that taken into consideration, we can't let it get worse. So stop the bleeding. Stop the bleeding at least. God damn it. Ugh. Man. Okay. Let's move to some uplifting stuff, right? The New Republic has a piece talking about how the secret to the Democrats' future lies in Western Pennsylvania, Allegheny County, where you have Summer Lee, who was elected to Congress in 2022 when she beat Steve Irwin. No, not the crocodile hunter. Steve Irwin, who was funded by major PACs trying to smear Summer Lee, claiming that, whoa, she is a bigot, she's this, she's that. No, Summer Lee is an unabashed, proud progressive, and she is standing up for the rights of Americans, and she is standing up for the rights of Pennsylvanians. Yes. This is the type of person that I want to represent me. I don't know about you, but Summer Lee is a badass, and Summer Lee is a wonderful congresswoman. Now, it's not just Summer Lee. You'll see here a little story about her. There's also, we have, it is still a company town just run by a different company. So this is about Pittsburgh. UPMC's vast power acquisition spree across not just Pennsylvania, but the world, and routine battles with labor have earned it the ire of Lee, members of the Pennsylvania State House, and Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey, whose administration is investigating nonprofit tax abuse across the city. You also have, let's see, where we have other names here. Well, of course, you have John Fetterman, who came out of Allegheny County. You have, let's see, where is it? Let me find. Oh, there it is. As I scroll to it, you have Sarah Innamorato, who is running for county executive in Allegheny County. She is a state representative, a unabashed progressive candidate endorsed. She is a Democrat endorsed by the Working Families Party, a proud progressive. This is the bread and butter approach that we have to take as progressives. Now, Allegheny County has Pittsburgh in it. We will take that into consideration. Proud, bold leaders are coming out of these places. You have Josh Shapiro, who, again, is not nearly as progressive as these folks, but comes out of Montgomery County. Not the bluest. I mean, it's blue, but it is not like 90% Democrat. Pennsylvania consistently showing how Democrats can win. I love this story, and you should read it. I will link it in the description of this video. Progressives are showing how to win, not just Democrats, but progressive Democrats are showing how to win in Allegheny and in Pittsburgh. These are the folks we should be looking for guidance. And they're not the only ones. There's more than just those two, but I just wanted to highlight those two because they are inspirational to me. They're both young, very young, to be in the positions that they're in, and they deserve to be there. In the chat, convincing non-politically engaged people to vote for Dems is going to be very hard in 2024. I don't know if I believe that. I believe that the continued erosion of people's rights from the Supreme Court should be a motivating factor. And frankly, 2024, if that was 2026, maybe that's more the case. But 2024 at this point is a presidential election. And most likely, as I guess we can talk about now, you will have Donald J. Trump, failed former president, twice impeached, twice indicted, who may be twice impeached, 4 times indicted by that point, being the nominee. And Trump motivates everybody much more than we could really account for, I think, at this point. I think people know that he can win, and I'm hopeful to understand. I'm hopeful that people really take that seriously. But here we have his weak opponent. Weak. Little Ron. Weak Ron. Sanctimonious. Ron DeSantis was visiting us in Pennsylvania here this past weekend at the radical extremist hate group labeled by the not the ACLU, oh man, drawing a blank on who's regardless. Radical hate group Moms for Liberty had their conference where Ron DeSantis was one of their headlining speeches. In it, he of course rails against woke, which I can't open the article now, of course. The Southern Poverty Law Center, thank you. Yes. So, in his speech, he's quoted as saying, and I couldn't find the exact video without having other people talking over it. Says, as president, I will fight the woke in the corporations. I will fight the woke in the schools. I will fight the woke in the halls of Congress. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. So this guy is on such fire. He is absolutely crushing it. He is doing so well in the polls, in fact, that his own PACs are saying, oh, he's really far behind. Quote, every time he makes a campaign stop, voters seem to step back. The article says, to stop decline, pull DeSantis off the trail. Ron DeSantis is not gaining ground against Donald Trump at all. Just pulling up the polls here. He is net unfavorable 45 to 36. So that means he's got 9 percentage points more unfavorable than favorable. Let's pull up US resident. You have Trump 60, DeSantis 32. 49 Trump, 16 DeSantis. 52 Trump, 22 DeSantis. 52 Trump, 25 DeSantis. You just go down the line. Plus 38, plus 42, plus 38, plus 43, plus 34. All for Trump. This is after Trump has been arrested twice this year. And this guy, Ron DeSanctimonious, not catch up Trump. Because his fixation on wokeism is not working. And he is spatting with Disney. He is banning books. And it actually turns out that if you look, the American people are actually divided on whether woke is a compliment or an insult. The total, 56% of people believe that it is to be informed, educated on, and aware of social injustices. 56%. 78% of Democrats, 37% of Republicans, and 51% of independents. So if you actually go by age bracket, you see that the Fox News viewing group, the 50 plus, more likely to view woke as an insult, something bad. And that is the people that DeSantis is going for. He is trying to knock off those people, but he is not even piecing any of them, pulling them from Trump into his category. He is staying right around the same spot, if not dropping. And yes, it is a surprisingly large number of Republicans. 37%. But here's the thing. And this is what we have to remember. A lot of people don't watch the news. A lot of people don't go on Twitter. A lot of people don't watch YouTube. They don't listen to podcasts like this. They kind of just don't know. So, like, if you were just to say to me, like, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, what woke sounds like, woke would sound like, I'm aware, I'm awake, I'm alive, I know what's going on. Like, that's a broad definition of, like, what I would have assumed woke was before I knew what it means. And, like, let's be honest, no one really knows what it means. Like, what the Republicans are trying to label it as, at least. They don't even know. So, it's an interesting dynamic here, where it's actually not so clear. So his crusade against the woke is not actually going to win him a general election. He's letting himself be labeled as the further right candidate. He is trying to out Trump, but the thing is that if he does that and he somehow pulls off a victory in the Republican primary, he will not be able to win a general election. That is my opinion, at least. The last thing to talk about here is not that important, but we have this is a major story today, especially for if you're a Republican. The in the White House, they found there was some cocaine in the White House. Now, that is a big story, right? It is a big story. Lab testing for the substance found at the White House on Sunday has come back positive for cocaine, a spokesman said for the Secret Service. Previous field testing showed a positive result for cocaine, but the substance was sent for further evaluation and testing, the Secret Service had said previously. The substance was found near the ground floor entrance to the West Wing, a person familiar with the matter said. The location is where staff-led tours of the White House passed through on their way into the building. So, in reality, what probably just happened is what they just alluded to. There's probably a tour. Someone probably left it there, dropped it there, something to make it a big deal. But let's just say the most extreme thing possible happened. Let's just say that it was Joe Biden's. Well, let's just say it was Hunter Biden's. Although Hunter Biden's not in the White House, unlike Trump's kids. The real problem with drugs like cocaine is that they are hyper-criminalized, and there's the disparity in charging crimes of those of wealth and those without wealth. The drug war goes back to the 1960s, where there are direct orders to target African Americans and hippies. Most drugs, many of these drugs, should be looked at for either decriminalization or legalization. At least marijuana should be legal recreationally, and we should look at decriminalizing other drugs so that way we can treat people with the health care that they need without criminalizing addicts and just people that got into the wrong crowd. Let's just say that. Providing people opportunities to get healthier, like Hunter Biden, for that matter, frankly, to have access to healthcare, to have access to rehab facilities. That should be our goal. See, really, the only reason why I'm covering this is to allude to this war on drugs continuously, because we don't really talk about it that much in this country. But my opinion, the presidents are given, we don't know what's in their cocktail of drugs, but let's be honest, they're given a bunch of stuff so that they are alert, they're ready, they are aware. That's probably a good thing. It does not include cocaine. I can almost guarantee that. But the real problem here isn't that there is cocaine in the White House. There is obviously a security shortfalling here, and that needs to be stepped up. The issue with drugs in the United States is that we need to treat people with dignity. We need to decriminalize many drugs. We need to legalize marijuana so that we're not putting people in cages for possession or intent to distribute when there are literal dispensaries all over the country that are doing that exact thing. So That's the real story here. Hunter Biden is not dropping off cocaine at the White House, right wingers on Fox News. I can promise you that. With that being said, that is all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button down below. Hit the thumbs up so you can help us grow in the algorithm. Launch us towards 200 subscribers. And you can join our Discord server by hitting the link in the description box below. You can listen to the show, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. You can follow the show on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Greater Society Media. And you can follow me on Twitter at Con O'Hanlon. And you can support the show at patreon.com/Greater Society Media. Until next time, stay safe.